Welcome to the Say It Different podcast. My name is Tyler, and I'm joined every episode with my great friend, Justin Dailey. Our hope is to have real, authentic, and helpful conversations about the issues that we're all facing and talking about. Our perspective, it's going to say it different. I was at dinner the other night with my family, a little family dinner. Looked up from the table and noticed something that I think bears us discussing.
Okay, bears us.
Yeah, that was a good way of phrasing it. Yeah. There were several people around our table that were sitting in a style that was very, very concerning to me. Okay. There's something called riding the bus. If you've heard of this, when you're sitting at a table at a restaurant, there's a way you can sit across the table, or you sit next to each other in a booth. Yeah. Or next to each other at a four-top. Yep. You pull the two chairs over to each other and you're side by side. Yep. And the amount of two-tops that were sitting side by side was very alarming to me. It was 6 out of 10 tables were sitting in that. Okay. And I just feel like my personal preference would be to sit across from the individual, not next to the individual.
The individual being your spouse?
If I'm on a date. Yeah, if I'm on a date. I'm not saying all these people were married. Yeah. But you want to sit where you can have eye contact. I'm not going to get a crick in my neck. I need some room for the shooter with some elbows. And so I took a moment to kind of point all that out, and we walk through it with our kids to help them when they're dating.
You're educating them, yeah.
Yeah, to know. Yeah. But are you a side-by-side guy, or are you across the table guy?
I'm definitely across the table.
Yeah.
But Gabby's
a cuddle?
Side-by-side.
Cuddle bug?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just can't cuddle and eat at the same time.
No, and I don't want her. She has easier access to try and steal some of my food if we're side by side. Yeah. So, very clear. You can order whatever you want, but don't touch my plate. Is there a single bite expectation?
If you order something, she's going to get one bite and one bite only?
Yeah. She
taste?
She asks for one every time. Yeah. Or most times.
Yeah.
And my first response is usually no. You ordered.
If you like what I see, you should have ordered.
We both made decisions, and just because you regret yours doesn't mean you can have any of mine.
Yeah.
But then I usually give it.
Well, then what typically is the response in that instance for me is, well, two become one. What's mine is yours would be how I think it's been phrased.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of splitting, but not splitting the meal, but having a very clear discussion before of you get something, I get something, and then we go a little halvesies.
Yeah. If you could go in the time machine and go back to the very first dates, when you're trying to impress the individual, you're trying to make a good first impression, and they ask in that moment if that looks good, could I have a bite? Mm-hmm. If you go back to that time, would you caution the young men out there looking to find a
don't set a precedent.
Don't set a precedent. That's it.
Yeah, I think if I had to go back, I would say my answer is yes, because our first date, I just want if this goes anywhere, there'll be a time where that answer will no longer be yes.
Yeah. When is that time going to come? Because
it's got to be soon.
Do you think I'm at that time?
You've been married a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. 16 years. I think it's time to put a
I think
stake
you're
in the
about
ground.
15 and a half years late.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Now, here's the thing. If you have a discussion before and you know what she's ordering and you like it, we make a decision to split. It's just, if I'm getting steak and potatoes and she's getting like a strawberry chicken salad, then I don't want to bite yours. No. Yeah. Just clear.
Yeah. And if
relationships are mostly about expectations and unmet expectations. So let's just set clear expectations.
Yeah. Sometimes you do though. And it's not always met. It's not always met with a spirit of yes.
No. But expectations that aren't liked are better than unmet expectations, and at least we're clear.
Yeah. The other thing that will fire you up, and we've deviated from the table etiquette, but the other thing that will fire me up is if I order a dessert, because I like a good tasty treat. Dessert. I love a good tasty treat. Yeah. And if I order a milkshake and then all of a sudden I got a second straw in my milkshake, I can't do that. Yeah. That I can't do. Yeah. Yeah. I wanted it. Yeah. You said no. And now, why is there a second?
Does anybody want dessert? And then she says no, and you get something, and then she went, now she wants dessert.
No, I think we do want. I think I want a dessert. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this Reese's pie sounds great.
I think you should remind her in those moments about integrity. saying what you meaning what you say, following through. And she said, no, I don't want a dessert.
I don't know that I hear what you're saying, but I don't know that I'm going to put that advice into practice.
Also, for the married people listening, date night, hopefully there's other things that happen.
Yes.
And I don't think we're giving good advice that will lead to marital activities.
I would also, since we're talking to married couples now, non-married couples,
earmuffs.
as we said before, earmuffs,
earmuffs.
But we're talking to married couples. I would also suggest never going on date night to a place like Texas Day, Brazil, because there's no woman that wants to see a man eat that amount of meat and sodium. Yep. That's gross. Yep. And it's just not going to end well. Yep. You're going to have all kinds of stomach bubbles later on in the night, and there's going to be no romance. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. You gotta play the long game.
You got to play the long game. Yeah. That is the message of this episode.
Is it?
Play the long game. Play the long game. That is not, but that is helpful. You had a message not too long ago at church where the scripture was also referenced, where as Christians we're called to die to ourselves. And because I'm just such an engaged church member at the church, not just because you're my boss, but because I just love the church. I love taking notes, and every sermon that you preach, I'm
such
always
a learner.
completely just laser focused.
Thank you.
I made a note with this idea of idolatry.
Okay.
And I think your message, you were kind of talking about the idol of self. We die to our opinions. We pick up our cross.
Yep.
And it made me kind of think about all of the idols that exist in our world today. So as Christians, we read our Bibles and we read about specifically probably in the Old Testament, where we see the idolatry very tangibly. People have a shrine in their
it was
tents.
a created figure. Yeah.
They've got a golden calf in their corner, they whatever, right? And it's easy to look at 2024 and think idolatry. I mean, maybe in like some other country, but not here, right? Like not in America. We don't have temples and shrines where all of that is like out in the open the way that it might be in other places.
Yep.
But there is idolatry that exists here.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm curious what you think what is some of those idols that you think are big?
One of the biggest temples in America for idols are football stadiums, right?
Yeah.
I mean, anything that replaces God. And so you and I have them. Like we all sin, so I'm not judging, but yeah, like Alabama football for me would be an easy idol. Like I'm not going to miss a game.
Yep.
If I'm spending more money to go to a game than I'm giving to the church, like I've made that an idol. So it's not bad to have hobbies, but yeah, our kids could be our idol. Our spouse could be our idol. Our hobby could be our idol. Our work could be our idol. Anything that we worship, which means anything that we give more attention to than the things of God, could become an idol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The idols in America in 2024 are kind of sneaky idols, right? Like I put sports down on my list. I put kids down on my list. I put politics down on my list.
For sure.
Which is interesting that today we actually have this whole thing called identity politics. So it is out in the open. Your identity is found in your politics, right? And I put technology. I put opinions with social media.
For sure.
Those might be kind of linked, but
for sure.
And it's just, all of those things are just right out there, and all of us wrestle and struggle with them. One idol that I noted personally is the idol of sleep. And so the amount of times that I hit snooze when I want to wake up in the morning early to have some time to pray, to read my Bible, and to have my day start off on the right foot before I have to get all my kids up and get them ready for school is like embarrassing to admit how often I hit snooze versus get out of bed on the first thing, right? Yeah. So like that is something I'm prioritizing above God in that moment.
For sure.
So there's kind of this lack of self-control with all that I really feel like maybe is a conversation to have here with you. I look at all of those idol examples. I look at the fruit of the Spirit, and I look at love and joy and peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. Did I get them all?
Yep.
Self-control is the one that's on the end of that list, but it's arguably maybe the most important one of all of them as far as reflecting our hearts and our submission to God.
Yeah. Because it'd be more of our actions. Yeah.
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 So what I'm seeing in these lists is a lack of self-control because we're putting things that are appealing to our senses or appealing to our fleshly desires,
For sure.
right? Above the things.
Food would be another one.
Food could be.
Yeah.
Well, that one's hitting a little close to home because I do like a good tasty treat.
Right.
And I just don't know that I'm ready to put that on the list just yet. Let's not jump into that.
Yeah.
But what about idols in the church? I put some of those too, right? So
interesting.
I think as church leaders specifically, there's a couple of idols that maybe could be things that we battle here. And I'd love to get your thoughts on it.
Okay.
An idol of growth.
Yep.
Wanting to expand and grow above what is God kind of calling us to do.
Yep.
An idol of style or preference. This is how church should be.
For sure.
This is what church is supposed to be. These are the people church is supposed to be reaching. These are the songs a church is supposed to be singing. Yep. These are the series a church is supposed to be doing. Idol of expectation. What I meant by that was, this is my church. This is my seat. This is my parking spot. This is what I'm expecting to happen today. And when that gets disrupted, my whole day and experience at church is ruined. Well, why are you coming to church? Right. And the last one I put there was maybe the idol of people's affirmation, where everything that I'm doing at church, whether it's me serving or if it's a staff member, me leading and working, is for the recognition of people rather than doing it out of a place of calling.
Yep. Those are all, I think, going back through that list, I mean, for growth, I think that's probably more of a church leader or staff member or pastor idol, because we've now wrapped up our calling. I talked about this in a message recently. We've wrapped up our calling in our success. The Bible does call us to be fruitful. So faithfulness is fruitfulness. So there should be good works produced. There should be spiritual growth and physical growth in a healthy local church. But when you make that the goal, you've started to worship the wrong thing. So like if growth is the only goal, what about all the other things that put God at the center? Like what if it's just so limiting that the only thing that in which a church would be healthy is if it was expanding and growing. The preference thing is big because, started whole denominations, church splits, denominational splits off of songs and verses. And so that's a huge one. I think all of them just distract from the purpose to worship God collectively, and then to go out and make a difference and introduce people to God. So I think that whole list, I don't remember all four, but they all disconnect us from the main thing.
Yeah. What about helping people identify like idols? So we said it earlier. We're not really building golden calves and putting them in our homes and bowing down to worship them. So it's a little bit harder to find or to distinguish what's actually an idol in my life and what maybe isn't. And so you said it's great to have hobbies, which 100%. But how do we distinguish those idols in our life?
I think everything should just be done in proportion. Like, so God should get your first and your best. Like your family should get second, and then all those other things should fall in line somewhere. It's when those things supersede. So go back to the sports. It's when I always pick sports over the things of God. Like I don't ever go to church on Sunday because in the NFL season, because my NFL team's playing. Well, that's an idol. Like if you replace, I don't ever serve or go to church because of what my kids are doing. Well, then now they've become an idol because your world is revolving around them. So I think the test is does it fit in the proper place? And how do you know like that something has become an idol? Does it get your time, your attention, and your resource? And if it gets those above the things of God, then you've probably dabbled or taken a step into idolatry.
What about if I've identified this idol and I've acknowledged, okay, I'm going to come up with a plan to kind of break away from its pull in my life. Well, if it's something's an idol, then there's been a habit of practice to
sure.
said idol.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be like a New Year's resolution, right? I set out a plan, and maybe I stick to that plan for a day or two. And if it's me with this sleep thing, tomorrow I'm up at 5:30, come hell or high water, it's on. And then that thing goes off at 5:30, that alarm goes off, and it's snooze again.
Yep.
So how do we battle now? We're battling shame, or we're battling a spirit of like,
if you're struggling with anything, an addiction, something that's replaced God, a toxic relationship, I think the verse that we always share is his mercies are new every morning. And so you can only do what you can do that day. Like I can't go back and I can't go forward. And so I would just encourage somebody, like, make the next right decision that day. If I don't do it the day before, tomorrow I'm going to try and do it. Like his mercies are new every morning. So I'm going to have the strength and the grace and the power to do it. But if I keep thinking, well, the enemy will keep us trapped in shame of like, well, I'm just screwed up. It's going to happen again. No, make. And if you screwed up that day, that morning, like make a different decision that afternoon. So I think we get too obsessed with, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. No, just make the next right decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if anything, this exercise with this conversation today is, probably a picture of what should be happening in church services, where you're listening to a sermon, you're getting encouraged, you're taking a note, and then you're processing, wait, how does this impact and how does this apply to my life now? And while some of this is certainly pertaining to church leadership, I think that all of us can connect to this idea of idolatry in our lives.
I would say every person listening has something that they idolize or that they struggle with idolizing.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Right.
Everybody does.
Right.
And a lot of times I think where the enemy gets us is it's not bad things.
Right.
So it's not sin to have that hobby or to have that activity or that habit. Now there are some things that are sin, but overall a lot of us would have good things. Like our kids are good. But when our kids replace God, they're an idol. Having a hobby of working out or running or college football, great things, great recreational things. That's something God's even given you. He wants us. He says, give us all good things for our enjoyment. So he wants us to enjoy those things. But when they begin to replace God as the priority, then they are sin. I think that what the thing itself is not sin, but when it replaces God, it is a sin and it separates us from him.
Yeah. What gets heavy though with idolatry is it's one of the 10 commandments.
Right.
Right. You shall not have any other gods before me.
Right.
And there's probably a traditional line of religious thinking that's saying if it's one of the 10 commandments and you're violating it, it's worse than violating the, I don't know, inappropriate thought you had about the guy that cut you off in traffic this morning. Mm-hmm. So
that's not true, but
yeah, walk me through that a little bit.
Well, the 10 commandments were a part of God giving this people the Levitical law, which people don't understand that either, because it was really just God teaching his people who had been in slavery for over 400 years. He was just teaching them his standard. He was preparing them for a better way to live because they didn't know any better. And so he gave them a standard, which we know he gave us knowing that we could never meet it. That's why he gave us Jesus. And so it talks about all throughout the New Testament, it's our sin that separates us from God, but God doesn't categorize our sin. It's like to him, our sin separates. Jesus redeems, restores, builds the bridge. And so God does not categorize. He doesn't have big sins and little sins. Just has things, our mistakes, our flesh, our sin nature, without Jesus separates us. And so I heard somebody say one time, we stack sins like this, like inappropriate thoughts or inappropriate text, and then full out adultery. We would say like, these are all different.
Yeah. Like a totem pole.
Yeah. The consequences are different, because if you murder somebody, you're going to prison.
Yeah.
If you say, I hate somebody, you're not going to jail.
Yeah.
But spiritually speaking, when we sin, like that does represent us separating from God. So it's all, so he doesn't do like this. He stacks them side by, it's all the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the enemy uses shame so much because he's like, oh, you've committed a big sin. No, like Jesus died and redeems big sins, small sins, thoughts, actions, if we give them to him.
Yeah. Well, I think another piece to it is Christian, American culture. Christianity is defined as going to church, and it's kind of a once a week thing that you just do your best to get your family to it, maybe once a month. And I think there's a piece of biblical literacy or knowing your Bible, knowing God's standard more than just listening to the pastor tell you God's standard.
For sure.
That's tied to some of this too. So how would you kind of encourage the person that's working 50, 60 hours a week, has limited time, but they're doing their best to get to church.
Yep.
But there's just this piece of like, I don't even know how to start understanding this stuff.
Right. I mean, there's so many great tools that we live in day and age where technology brings so many negative things in our life, but it also brings so many positive things. You don't have to go to seminary to dive deeper in the Word of God. I mean, there's so many great resources. You've got Blue Letter Bible, you got Bible Gateway, you've got Wiersbe's commentary, you've got YouVersion. So you don't need a lot of time or a lot of resources to take a step. And so I would just challenge them. Yeah. Your relationship with God is a relationship, which means that it needs continuous investment.
Yeah.
Both receiving and giving. And so it can't just be a Sunday thing or a twice a month thing. And for some of you, it could be you have an hour a day, but even if you had 5 minutes a day, like I would say correlate it to your spouse or your kids. Like just because you don't have an hour, does that mean you don't give them 5 minutes? No, if you're a healthy father or a healthy husband, you're going to invest whatever you can. So I would just say start somewhere. Like, and you need a local church. You need a pastor. You need accountability, but you also need in your alone time in your own personal walk to be able to dive in and develop a close relationship with God on your own. Like it is your relationship.
Yeah.
I can teach you, but I can't change you. Only the Holy Spirit can do that. So you have to fight and figure out and learn a lot of things on your own.
Yeah.
It's like we're here to help, but we're not here to do it for you.
Well, I think, yeah, just the principle of just start somewhere is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your prayer can be 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a start. Yeah. The good news for you is Nick Saban retired.
Yes.
And so the idol of Alabama football could be very easy to pull back from this next season.
God works in mysterious ways, and sometimes he removes things to challenge and to grow us.
I don't want to say God removed Nick Saban for you, but it could have been. It could have been.
I still think we're going to be better than both of your teams this year.
Both of my teams.
Yeah.
Who are my teams?
You are one of the two people that have two teams, and it's Auburn and Florida.
Yeah. I think we're close enough to know. First of all, I went to Auburn my freshman year.
Yeah. How did that go? Different podcast, so different episode.
It went great.
Yeah.
For all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad pulled me aside and said he's not spending out of state tuition for me to major in.
Would you feel comfortable sharing your actual GPA of your freshman year of Auburn?
What I'd be more comfortable sharing because it was higher is my blood alcohol level, because that was impressive. But that was why I came back home. But yeah, so I'm only a War Eagle fan. It's mainly because you're an Alabama fan, and somebody's got to be willing.
So you're a Florida Gator
to be in the room and just go against the grain.
I would definitely bet that Alabama has a better record this year than the Gators.
Florida football has seen better days. Yeah.
To just put it out there for the public, I think we are going to be a really good team consistently with the new coaching staff, and we'll be great every few years.
Okay.
More normal.
Yeah.
The dynasty can't last forever.
Well, that's better than what I'm praying for. I'm praying that in this post-COVID world, Tim Tebow still has some eligibility left, and he's going to come back and save the Gator.
What a great
program.
speech. Yeah.
That would be epic.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Roll Tide.
Well, we've covered dating etiquette.
Yep.
We've covered plate sharing for spouses.
Yes.
We've covered idolatry, and we've covered college football, I think.
And I think I just got convicted. Maybe food is an idol for me if I'm not willing to share it with those that I love. So maybe I need to learn and grow.
Yeah. See, now you're getting into some tender space.
Yeah, that's called putting a bow on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. wrap that thing up.
I think we got to move before we get too much more convicted.
Okay.
I don't like how I'm feeling. Right
You don't
now.
like
I don't like
conviction?
it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody likes conviction.
I don't like
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point.
Well, hey, thanks for the listen.
Yep.
Hope you subscribe. Hope you share. Hope you rate.
Yep.
We'll see you next episode.
Man, thank you so much for watching or listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, share. We'd love to hear what you think about the podcast, and follow us on Say It Different Podcast. Not .com, just Say It Different Podcast. I'm old. Hopefully you got the point.